My husband, Hank, left me for a woman young enough to be our daughter and took our entire family, the whole kit and caboodle, to his wedding in Italy. Before he left, he sent me a text message that I'll have etched on my heart, till the day I die. It said, "Be gone when we return. I hate old things. I work hard so I deserve a new life." When they came back, tanned and laughing, stepping out of the airport limo, they found only a perfectly graded, empty plot of land where our beautiful Texas home once stood. Their faces went bone white. I watched the whole thing from my parked car across the street, and I couldn't stop smiling. Where are you watching from today? Go on and drop your location in the comments below, and don't you forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Now let me tell you just how I got to this sweet, delicious moment of justice. Picture it. Me sitting in my sensible Subaru Outback at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, watching my cheatin' ex-husband Hank and his child bride, Tiffany, stare at a perfectly manicured, completely empty lot where our $800,000 suburban paradise in Southlake, Texas used to sit. Oh, the look on Hank's face was worth more than the house itself. You'd think someone had just told him his precious membership at the country club had been revoked. 6 months ago, I was Martha Thompson, faithful wife of 28 years, mother to 2 shockingly ungrateful adult children, and apparently, according to my husband, a nagging old bat who'd lost her figure and her purpose. Those were his exact words, bless his heart, when he announced he was leaving me for Tiffany, his dental hygienist. Because nothing says midlife crisis quite like a 24-year-old with professionally whitened teeth and a whole mess of daddy issues. The whole family supported him, naturally. Our son, Cody, who at 28 was still living high on the hog off his trust fund, called it Dad's second chance at happiness. Our daughter, Madison, 26 and a professional social media influencer, which as far as I can tell, means she takes pictures of herself for a living, actually helped plan the big destination wedding in Tuscany. "Mom, you have to understand," she'd said to me, not even looking up from painting her nails a particularly garish shade of pink while she delivered this profound piece of wisdom. "Dad's been super unhappy for years. Tiffany makes him feel young again." I wasn't invited to the wedding, of course. Hank made that crystal clear when he was packing up his golf clubs and his ridiculously large collection of Tommy Bahama shirts. "Martha, I mean it. I need you gone when we get back. Start fresh somewhere. Maybe move down to Florida where all the other old people go." He'd actually laughed at his own joke while loading his clubs into Tiffany's bright pink Jeep Wrangler, a Jeep I later found out was paid for with our money. "I hate old things," he'd said, that final cruel twist of the knife. "I work hard so I deserve a new life." But here's the thing Hank didn't know about his old wife. I'd been quietly planning for this very day since the moment I found a lacy thong from Victoria's Secret, definitely not my size or style, in his gym bag 3 years ago. You see, Hank always thought he was the clever one, the big shot businessman. But I'd been the one handling our finances for nearly 3 decades. Every investment, every bank account, every single asset that man thought he owned. Well, let's just say Hank was about to get a real painful education on the difference between his name being on something and him actually owning it. The look on their faces when that limo pulled up to the curb and they found nothing but fresh green sod and a for sale sign hammered into the ground was worth every single penny I'd spent on that demolition crew. But honey, that was just the appetizer. Hank's voice, a bellowing roar of disbelief, carried across the empty lot like a wounded bull. "Martha!" he screamed, spinning in a slow, confused circle on the spot where our lovely flagstone front porch used to be. "What did you do to my house?" I rolled down my window just enough to hear the drama unfold clearly. This was better than any episode of Dallas I'd ever seen. Tiffany was clutching his arm, wobbling precariously on her ridiculously high designer heels. Apparently, 5-inch stilettos and freshly laid turf don't mix well. Who knew? Her bottle blonde hair was whipping around her face in the hot Texas breeze, and she looked like she was on the verge of a full-blown meltdown. Poor little thing. She probably thought she'd hit the jackpot and was moving into a mansion. "Hank, honey, where's our house?" Tiffany's voice was that special kind of high-pitched whine that could probably shatter glass. "You said we had a beautiful house, with a 3-car garage and a pool and everything." "We did have a house," Hank growled, his face turning a blotchy shade of red. That vein in his forehead was pulsing, the same way it used to when he couldn't find the TV remote. "Martha, I know you're out here somewhere. This is my property." Actually, sweetheart, it wasn't. But I wasn't about to interrupt this beautiful, Shakespearean breakdown to explain the finer points of Texas property law. It's truly amazing what you can learn and accomplish when you have a little time, a lot of money, and a burning desire for righteous justice. My phone buzzed with a text from my divorce attorney, Brenda Mae Collins. Brenda Mae was 68 years old, sharp as a tack, and had been handling the messy divorces of Dallas's elite for 40 years. When I'd first laid out my plan for her, she just smiled, a slow, dangerous smile like a gator spot in a poodle. Her text read, "Demolition complete. He can't touch you legally, darlin'. Enjoy the show." Hank was now frantically yelling someone on his phone, probably his lawyer. Poor fella. He probably thought this was going to be a simple, straightforward asset split. I'd met him once, a nervous little man who kept wiping his glasses on his tie and muttering, "Well, this is highly unusual. Every 5 minutes during our one and only meeting. What do you mean the house was legally sold?" Hank's voice cracked with panic. "I lived there for 28 years. My name was on the deed." He paused, listening. "Check again." I almost felt a pang of pity for him. Almost. Then I remembered the night he came home reeking of Tiffany's cheap vanilla body spray and told me I should consider updating my look, because, as he put it, maintenance matters in a long-term marriage. The same man who hadn't seen the inside of a gym since Bill Clinton was in office was giving me beauty advice. Tiffany had started to cry now, real gulping sobs that were sending rivers of black mascara down her carefully contoured cheeks. "Hank, I quit my job for you. I gave up my apartment. You promised me we'd have a beautiful home together." "We will, baby, we will. This is it's a misunderstanding." Hank was sweating clean through his pastel Tommy Bahama shirt. A shirt I'd bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. "Martha's just being vindictive. We'll fix this." That's when Cody's gleaming black BMW pulled up to the curb. My heart did a little flutter, a foolish little flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, one of my children would show an ounce of concern for their mother. But no. Cody jumped out of his car, his face a mask of panic. Not for me, of course, but for the missing house where he'd planned to crash for free between his failed business ventures. "Dad, what the hell happened to the house?" "Your psycho mother happened." Hank spat. And that, right there, was his second big mistake. The first was the cheating. The second was calling me a psycho in front of witnesses. Because, you see, I'd been recording this whole beautiful meltdown on my phone, and Brenda Mae was gonna absolutely love this footage. "Dad, you can't be serious." Cody was staring at the empty patch of land like he could make a house magically sprout from it if he just concentrated hard enough. "Where are we supposed to live?" "We'll figure it out, son." Hank was trying to sound calm and in control, but his voice had that high-pitched squeaky quality it always got when he was about to lose it. "This is just temporary. Your mother's playing games, but I'll get this all straightened out. Legally." Just then, Madison's car pulled up next, her Instagram-famous bubblegum pink Mustang looking ridiculously out of place against the backdrop of suburban emptiness. She climbed out slowly, her phone already in her hand recording everything, because heaven forbid she experience a single moment of family crisis without documenting it for her 500,000 followers. "Oh, my God." Madison's voice was a breathless whisper. "Dad, this is like totally insane. My childhood home, it's just gone." She was definitely making a TikTok. I could already see the caption in my head. "Family drama is wild, y'all. #divorce, #crazy ex-wife, #stepmom problems." Actually, sweetheart, your stepmom had nothing to do with this particular masterpiece. This was all your dear old mom. The one you haven't bothered to call in 3 months. "Martha did this," Hank announced to Madison, as if he were delivering the evening news. "She sold our house right out from under us while we were at the wedding." "Wait, can she even do that?" Tiffany's voice squeaked. "I thought you said everything would be fine. You said we'd work out all the divorce stuff later." Oh, now this was getting interesting. Hank had told his new wife they'd work out the divorce stuff later. That little tidbit strongly suggested that they hadn't actually gotten legally married overseas, which would mean that Tiffany had quit her job and given up her apartment to move in with a man who was still very much married to someone else. Poor planning on her part, really. Of course she can't do that. Hank was lying through his teeth now, and everyone standing there knew it. "I'm calling my lawyer right now." This is theft. This is fraud. This is legal, I said, finally rolling down my window completely and stepping out of my car. They all whipped around to stare at me like I just materialized out of thin air. Hank's mouth actually dropped open. Tiffany took a startled step backward, nearly losing her balance again. Cody just looked confused, which was pretty much his default setting, and Madison, bless her heart, immediately swung her phone camera around to point directly at me. "Hello, family," I said pleasantly, smoothing down my new, shorter haircut. I'd gone a few shades blonder too, and judging by the stunned look on Hank's face, it looked pretty damn good on me. "How was Italy? Martha, what have you done?" Hank's voice was a strangled croak. "I sold my house." I kept my tone light and conversational, like we were discussing the weather. "Demolished it, actually. The new owners wanted to start fresh with the lot. Can't say I blame them. The previous owner had just terrible taste in furniture." "Your house?" Hank's face was toned in a dangerous shade of purple now. "That was our house. We bought it together." "Actually, Hank, we didn't." I pulled a crisp manila folder out of my purse, the same purse he'd called matronly last Christmas. "See, when you started your little affair 3 years ago, I got a bit curious about our finances. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that this house was purchased entirely with inheritance money from my parents. My name was the only one on the original deed." The silence that followed stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. That's impossible," Hank whispered. "Your name was added to the title later as a gift, back when I foolishly thought we had a solid marriage. But in the great state of Texas, gifts like that can be revoked under certain circumstances. Adultery, for instance, is a big one." I smiled sweetly at Tiffany, who was looking increasingly pale and slightly sick to her stomach. "Hank, what is she talking about?" Tiffany's voice was small now, all the wine gone out of it. That's when I decided to drop the first real bomb. "Oh honey, didn't he tell you? Hank and I are still married." The color drained from Tiffany's face so fast, I thought she might actually faint right there on the grass. "Still married?" "Very married," I confirmed cheerfully. "You see, Hank told everyone you two got married in Italy. But what he conveniently left out is that you can't actually get married to someone when you're already legally married to someone else. That's a little thing called bigamy, and it's generally frowned upon in most civilized countries." "Hank." Tiffany's voice was barely a whisper. "Hank, tell her she's lying." Hank just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish gasping for air. Madison had stopped recording, and was now staring at her father with a dawning look of horror. Even Cody, who could usually sleep through a tornado, was looking wide awake and alert. We were going to. The paperwork, it got complicated." Hank finally stammered, stumbling over his words like a drunk trying to walk a straight line. "What paperwork would that be?" I asked innocently. "The divorce paperwork that I never signed? The paperwork that your lawyer never even sent me? Or maybe you mean the marriage license that doesn't exist because you are already married to me." This was the part one had been looking forward to for months. You see, Hank had spent so much time and energy planning his grand romantic Italian getaway that he'd completely forgotten about the tedious little details, like, actually filing for divorce. He just assumed I'd quietly pack my bags and disappear, that I'd sign whatever papers he eventually got around to sending me, and let him go on and live his best life. Men like Hank always assume that women like me will just roll over and play dead. We're supposed to be grateful for 28 years of marriage to a man who thinks Hooters is fine dining and considers scratching himself in public a valid form of self-expression. "So what you two had was a commitment ceremony," I continued, thoroughly enjoying the way Hank was sweating through his shirt. "Very sweet. Totally meaningless from a legal standpoint, but sweet." "You?" Tiffany finally found her voice, and it was shrill enough to wake the neighbors. "You ruined everything. We had plans. We were going to be happy. Were you now?" I tilted my head, feigning sympathy. "And I suppose those plans included living in my house, spending my money, and playing stepmom to my children, all while I conveniently vanished into thin air? How very thoughtful of you to plan my life out for me." "Mom, this is seriously messed up." Madison was looking at me now like she was seeing me for the very first time. "You can't just destroy people's lives because you're mad." "Can't I?" I asked. Your father destroyed my life when he decided that our marriage was something he could just walk away from the moment he got bored. He took our children, our friends, our entire social circle, and he tried to take our home. The only thing he didn't manage to take was my brain. Cody was frantically typing on his phone, probably looking for a new place to live. The trust fund baby was about to discover that trust funds don't last forever when you have zero income. Where are we supposed to go? Hank demanded, his voice regaining a little of its old bluster. I have rights. I have belongings in that house. Had, I corrected him gently. Past tense. And actually, your belongings are safely packed away in a storage unit over in Grapevine. Unit 247. The rent's paid through the end of the month. I handed him a small shiny key. After that, you're on your own. A storage unit? Hank stared at the key in his palm like it was a dead cockroach. You put my stuff in storage? I kept what mattered to me and donated the rest to Goodwill. It's amazing how little of it actually mattered when I really thought about it. And that was the God's honest truth. 28 years of accumulated junk, and the only things I bothered to keep were the old family photos and my grandmother's china. Everything else had just been taking up space. Hank was just standing there, holding that little key, looking utterly lost and confused. For a split second, I almost felt a flicker of that old familiar pity. Almost. Then Tiffany opened her mouth again. This isn't over, you crazy old bat. And that's when I smiled my biggest, brightest, most genuine smile of the day. Because Tiffany, in her infinite wisdom, had just made her first truly serious mistake. She'd threatened me. In front of witnesses. While I was recording. Brenda May was gonna have an absolute field day with this. But more importantly, she just handed me the perfect excuse to roll out phase 2 of my plan. Old bat, I repeated, pulling out my phone and making sure the red recording light was still on. That's an interesting choice of words. Tell me, Tiffany, how old do you think I am? Old enough to be completely desperate and pathetic. She was really getting wound up now, her pretty little face twisted into an ugly mask of rage. No wonder Hank left you. You're just bitter and cruel. And 52, I interrupted calmly. I'm 52 years old. Hank here is 55. That makes me 3 whole years younger than your boyfriend. But I suppose when you're 24, everyone over 30 just looks ancient. Age is just a number. Tiffany shot back, but her voice lacked conviction. You're absolutely right, I agreed. Just like bankruptcy is just a word. Hank's head snapped up. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, did I forget to mention? I checked my watch as if I were running late for an important appointment. Hank, honey, you remember that business loan you co-signed last year? The one for Cody's brilliant new cryptocurrency startup? Cody went very, very still. Mom, you wouldn't. Wouldn't what, sweetie? Call in the loan that's now 3 months overdue? The loan that you personally guaranteed with your father's signature? I looked at Hank with an expression of mock concern. You did read all the fine print on that paperwork before you signed it, didn't you? Hank's face had gone from red to white to a sickly shade of green. Cody, you said that was just a formality. You said the business was a guaranteed success. It was. Cody protested weakly. The market it shifted. Crypto is volatile. I can turn it around, I just need more time. I'm sure you can, I said sweetly. But the loan company doesn't seem to think so. They've been very patient, but patience has its limits. As does my willingness to continue covering for family members who seem to think I'm just an old bet they can walk all over. Madison was staring at me like I just sprouted a second head. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying that I have personally been covering Cody's loan payments for the last 3 months, hoping he'd figure out how to be a responsible adult. But since he seems to think his mother is just a convenient ATM, I've decided to stop enabling his spectacular incompetence. You can't do that. Hank was in full-blown panic mode now. If that loan defaults, they'll come after my assets. My credit will be ruined. What assets? I asked innocently. Your house is gone. Your savings account was frozen by my attorney this morning, pending our divorce proceedings. And your credit cards? Well, let's just say American Express is about to be very, very disappointed when they try to collect on those balances. This was the beautiful little tidbit I'd been savant for the perfect moment. Hank thought he'd been so clever, hiding assets and racking up debt in accounts he thought I didn't know about. But I'd known about every secret credit card, every hidden expense, every single dollar he'd spent on Tiffany's designer bags and romantic weekend getaways. I'd just been waiting for the right time to use that information. How did you? Hank started to ask, then stopped. How did I know about your secret accounts? About the money you've been funneling to your girlfriend? About the debts you've been hiding from me? I gave a little shrug. Hank, I handled our finances for 28 years. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when you started acting like a teenager with a stolen credit card? Tiffany was looking back and forth between Hank and me with wide, alarmed eyes. Hank, what is she talking about? What money? What debts? It's nothing, baby. Just some misunderstandings. $43,000 in credit card debt, I announced cheerfully. All of it in Hank's name, of course. It's amazing how quickly the expenses add up when you're trying to impress a young woman. Jewelry from Neiman Marcus, trips to Cabo, that adorable pink Jeep. You bought me that Jeep for my birthday. Tiffany whirled to face Hank. You told me it was paid for. It is paid for. Hank insisted, his voice cracking. I mean, it will be. The payments are totally manageable. $647 a month, I added helpfully. Plus the insurance for a 24-year-old driver in what's considered a high-risk vehicle category. That's another $300 a month, easy. I could practically see the wheels turning in Tiffany's head as she did the math, and judging by her expression, the numbers were not adding up the way she'd hoped. Hank, she said slowly, her voice dangerously quiet. You told me you were wealthy. You said money wasn't a problem. It's not a problem. Martha's just being vindictive. Once the divorce is final, I'll get half of everything and… Half of what? I interrupted. Hank, sweetie, there is no everything to split. There's just debt. Mountains of it. And it's all in your name. And that's when I saw it. The precise, beautiful moment when Tiffany realized she had quit her job, given up her apartment, and attached herself to a man who was not only still married, but was also completely, utterly broke. The exact moment she understood that she traded her independence for a fantasy that was never, ever going to come true. It was a thing of beauty. Wait. Tiffany was waving her hands around like she was trying to clear away smoke. Hank, you told me you owned a successful company. You said you were planning to retire in 5 years. I do own a company, Hank protested, but his voice lacked all of its usual blustering confidence. Thompson Construction has been profitable for 15 years. Thompson Construction. I laughed out loud for the first time all day, a real genuine belly laugh. Oh honey, that's just precious. Go on, Hank. Tell her about Thompson Construction. Tell her who actually owns it. Hank's stony silence was answer enough, but I was enjoying myself way too much to stop now. You see, Tiffany, Hank here likes to tell people he owns a construction company. What he doesn't mention is that Thompson Construction is, and always has been, owned entirely by me. Hank is an employee. A very well-paid employee, I'll grant you, but still just an employee. That's impossible. Hank sputtered. Is it? Should I call Tom Bradley and ask him who signs his paycheck? Tom was Hank's foreman, a good, hard-working man who'd been running the actual day-to-day operations for years while Hank was out playing golf and telling everyone what a successful business owner he was. Or maybe we should ask the IRS. Since, I've been the one filling the business taxes under my name for the last 15 years. This was my favorite part of the whole plan. Hank had spent so many years taking credit for my work, for my money, for my business savvy, that he'd actually started to believe his own lies. He really, truly thought he owned that company, even though every single legal document, from the articles of incorporation to the tax filings, clearly showed my name as the sole proprietor. But I built that company, Hank shouted, his voice hoarse with desperation. I worked 60 hours a week for years. You worked for me, I corrected him. And you were paid very well for your work. But owning a business, that requires paperwork, Hank. Legal paperwork. The kind I've always handled because you always said you hated all that boring stuff like contracts and tax forms. Madison was recording again, but this time her expression was one of pure, slack-jawed confusion rather than gleeful excitement. Mom, are you saying Dad doesn't actually own anything? That's exactly what I'm saying, sweetheart. Your father has been living off my money in my house, driving my cars, and working for my company for years. The only things he actually truly owns are his golf clubs and that ridiculous collection of Tommy Bahama shirts. She's lying. Hank turned to Cody, his last hope. Son, you know I'm successful. You've seen the company trucks, the job sites. I've seen Mom's company trucks, Cody said slowly, and I could almost see the rusty gears in his head clicking into place. And Mom's the one who taught me about business licenses and state tax law. Mom's the one who showed me how to read a financial statement. Poor Cody. Not the sharpest tool in the shed, but at least he was finally starting to grasp the situation. This is insane, Tiffany declared, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. I'm calling my mother. I'm going home. That might be a problem, Hank said quietly. What do you mean? You said you gave up your apartment. Because you said we were getting married. Because you said we'd be living in your beautiful house. Tiffany was getting shrill now, her voice climbing toward a frequency that was probably annoying dogs 3 blocks away. We can figure this out, Hank insisted, but even he didn't sound convinced anymore. Figure what out? I asked pleasantly. Hank, you have no house, no money, no assets, and a mountain of debt. Tiffany has no job, no apartment, and apparently no legal relationship with you, despite what she thought was a wedding. Cody has a failed business and a massive loan he can't possibly pay back. And Madison has, well, actually Madison has her influencer career, so she's probably fine. Thanks, Mom, Madison muttered under her breath. You're welcome, sweetheart. I looked around at the sad little group, all of them staring at me like I was some kind of alien life form that had just crash-landed in their backyard. This has been fun, y'all, but I have an appointment with my lawyer in an hour. We're finalizing the divorce papers and discussing the restraining order. Restraining order? Hank's voice cracked. Oh yes. You see, when you sent me that text telling me to be gone when you returned, and when you called me a nagging old bat in front of witnesses, and when your little girlfriend here called me a crazy old bat and said, this isn't over, well, in legal terms that constitutes harassment and possibly even threatening behavior. Tiffany had gone very quiet. Smart girl. Unfortunately for her, it was a little too late for quiet. Brenda May thinks we have an excellent case for a restraining order that would prevent any of you from contacting me, coming within 500 feet of my new residence, or attempting to interfere with my business operations in any way. Your new residence? Hank asked weakly. I smiled and pulled out my car keys. Oh, did I not mention? I bought a lovely condo downtown. Cash purchase, of course. Gated community, excellent security, and absolutely no spare room for ungrateful children or cheatin' ex-husbands. That's when I delivered the final crushing blow of Phase 2. Oh, and Hank? You might want to check your email. The divorce papers were officially filed this morning. Since you never responded to any of the previous notifications, and since you've been committing adultery for the last 3 years, this is going to be what's called an uncontested divorce. I get everything. You get nothing. And your girlfriend here gets to learn what it's really like to date a broke, homeless, middle-aged man with terrible credit. I climbed back into my Subaru and started the engine rolling down the window one last time. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And remember, I work hard too. So I deserve my new life. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror. A pathetic little tableau of broken dreams, standing on that empty patch of land like the dazed survivors of some terrible natural disaster, trying to figure out what in the hell had just hit them. But I wasn't done with them yet. Oh no, honey. Phase 3 was going to be even better. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new downtown Dallas condo, sipping a glass of excellent Cabernet on my balcony, and overlooking the glittering city lights, when my phone started ringing. The caller ID showed Cody's number. I actually debated whether or not to answer, but in the end, curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Cody. Mom, we need to talk. His voice sounded different. Tired. Defeated, maybe. Can I come over? I'm sorry, but that's not possible. There's a restraining order in place, remember? You'd have to stay 500 feet away from my building. Mom, please. I know we screwed up. I know Dad screwed up. But this is getting out of hand. I took another sip of wine. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my living room, I could see the city sparkling below me like a spilled jewelry box. My new life was beautiful, it was quiet, and it was completely and utterly mine. What exactly is getting out of hand, Cody? Everything. Dad's sleeping in his car. Tiffany moved back in with her parents in Plano and won't take any of his calls. Madison is pretending this whole thing never happened, but she's getting dragged all over social media because someone who was there posted video of the whole empty lot thing. How unfortunate, I said, not feeling even a little bit sorry for any of them. And the loan company, they're being really aggressive, Mom. They're calling Dad at work, at your company, and they're threatening to garnish his wages. That's generally how debt collection works, Cody. You borrow money, you're expected to pay it back. If you don't pay it back, they find ways to make you pay it back. It's a simple concept. But he can't afford the payments. Not with trying to find a place to live and car payments and everything else. This was the part I'd been waiting for. The part where they'd all come crawling back, finally realizing just how much I'd been holding their entire lives together with spit and glue. Cody, let me ask you something. For the last 10 years, while your father was living in my house, eating the food I bought, driving the cars I paid for, and working at my company, how much do you think he contributed to the actual household expenses? Silence on the other end of the line. I'll tell you how much. 0. Not a single dime. Frank hasn't paid for his own living expenses in over a decade. Every penny he earned went toward his hobbies, his toys, and his girlfriends. I paid the mortgage. I paid the utilities. I paid the insurance, the groceries, the property taxes, the maintenance. I single-handedly subsidized his entire lifestyle while he ran around telling everyone what a successful self-made businessman he was. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, Cody. None of you wanted to know where the money came from, as long as it just kept coming. You all just assumed I'd always be there, always paying the bills, always cleaning up your messes. That's not fair. Isn't it? Cody, you're 28 years old. You've never held a steady job for more than 6 months. You've never paid rent in your life. You've never even bought your own groceries. Your father is 55 and has never balanced a checkbook. Madison makes a 6-figure income talking selfies, but she has never once paid for her own car insurance. Y'all are financial children. I could hear his heavy, frustrated breathing on the other end of the line. So what do you want us to do? He asked finally. I want you to grow up. I want you to learn what it feels like to actually work for something, instead of just having it handed to you on a silver platter. I want you to understand just for a minute what it felt like for me for 28 years, being taken for granted by the very people who were supposed to love me. Okay, I get it. We took advantage. We were ungrateful. But Mom, what's done is done. Can't we just move forward? Can't we be a family again? We were never a family, Cody. We were a woman raising 3 grown men who treated her like the hired help. That stung, I could tell. Good. Maybe it would motivate him to actually think about his life choices for a change. So what now? You're just going to let Dad be homeless? You're gonna let me go bankrupt? Cody, I'm not letting anything happen. You are all adults making adult choices and now you're facing adult consequences. This is called real life. But you could help us. You have the money. The company's doing great. And there it was. The real reason for the call. They weren't sorry for how they treated me. They weren't interested in making amends or rebuilding our relationship. They just wanted me to fix their problems and write them another check. You're right, I said calmly. I do have the money. And the company is doing very well. Tom Bradley is an excellent foreman, and without your father there to interfere with operations, we're actually more efficient and profitable than we've ever been. Wait, what do you mean? Without Dad there? Oh, that was interesting. So Hank hadn't told them about losing his job yet. Your father's employment was terminated 2 weeks ago. Excessive personal phone calls during work hours, using company resources for personal business, and a pattern of inappropriate behavior that was negatively affecting employee morale. You fired Dad? I fired an employee who was not performing his duties. The fact that he used to be my husband is completely irrelevant to my business operations. Cody was quiet for a long moment. Then, his voice small and defeated, he said, Mom, you're destroying us. No, Cody. I'm letting you destroy yourselves. I'm just not cleaning up the mess anymore. This isn't the mother I know. You never really knew me, I said sadly. You knew a woman who was too afraid of losing her family to ever stand up for herself. You knew someone who would rather be miserable than be alone. That woman is gone, son. And she's never coming back. I hung up the phone before he could respond. Outside my window, the city hummed with life and energy and possibility. My wine was the perfect temperature. My condo was exactly the right amount of quiet. And I had absolutely no one to take care of but myself. It was the best feeling in the world. The next morning I was sitting in my favorite armchair reading the newspaper, an actual physical paper newspaper, because some old-fashioned pleasures are worth preserving, when my building's concierge called up to my unit. "Mrs. Thompson, there's a young woman in the lobby askin to see you. She says she's your daughter, a Miss Madison Thompson." I'd been wondering when she'd finally make her appearance. "Please tell her that I am not available for visitors at the moment. But if she'd like to leave a message, I will consider it." "She says it's urgent, ma'am. Something about her father being in the hospital." My blood ran cold for a split second, but then I remembered who I was dealing with. Madison could make a hangnail sound like a life-threatening medical emergency if it suited her narrative. "Please ask her for the specific details. Which hospital and what is the nature of the emergency?" A few minutes later, the concierge called back. "She says he's at Baylor University Medical Center, ma'am. Something about chest pains and extreme stress. She seems quite upset." Despite everything, Hank was still the father of my children. And despite all my anger, I wasn't a complete monster. If he was genuinely ill, that was a different matter from him just being homeless and broke. "Tell her I will meet her in the lobby coffee shop in 10 minutes. I dressed carefully. Not too formal, but certainly not like someone who was worried or rushing around. If this was just another manipulation tactic, I wanted to make it crystal clear that I wasn't falling for it. Sophie was sitting at a corner table when I arrived, her phone face down on the table for once. Her usual Instagram perfect makeup was smudged with tears that, to my surprise, looked genuine. "Mom!" She stood up the moment she saw me, and for a fleeting second, she looked just like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Madison," I said, keeping my voice even, "tell me about your father." She sat back down heavily. He collapsed at work yesterday. Well, at Tom's work site, I guess. Tom was the one who called the ambulance." "What did the doctors say?" "Stress-induced heart palpitations. Dangerously high blood pressure. They want to keep him for observation, but—" She trailed off, looking deeply uncomfortable. "But he doesn't have health insurance anymore since you fired him, and he can't afford the hospital bills." And there it was. The real reason for this tearful meeting. "Madison, your father had excellent health insurance through Thompson Construction for 15 years, because I provided it. When his employment was terminated, he became eligible for COBRA coverage, which would have allowed him to maintain his insurance for up to 18 months. "What's COBRA?" I just stared at my daughter, this 26-year-old woman who made more money than most people with real jobs, and she didn't know what COBRA was. COBRA is a federal law that allows people to keep their employer-provided health insurance after they lose their jobs. Your father received all the necessary paperwork. He chose not to pay the premiums. Madison looked genuinely baffled. But why wouldn't he pay for insurance? Because COBRA premiums are expensive, and your father has been living in his car and spending what little money he has left on trying to win Tiffany back. It's a matter of priorities. He's been trying to win Tiffany back? Madison's voice rose in disbelief. "Mom, she won't even talk to him. She posted all over Instagram about dodging a bullet and called him a fake rich guy. She's already dating someone else." I almost felt sorry for Hank. Almost. Getting dumped by the gold digger who was only dating you for your money in the first place had to sting. Especially when you found out she'd already replaced you in less than a month. That's unfortunate for your father. But it is not my problem. "Mom, he's in the hospital. Because he made a series of choices that led to extreme stress and subsequent health problems. These are called natural consequences, Madison." She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "You really don't care, do you? You really just hate all of us now." "I don't hate anyone, Madison. But I am no longer responsible for fixing the problems that other adults have created for themselves." "But you're our mother." "I was your mother. I spent 28 years being your mother, your father's mother, and Cody's mother. I have officially retired from that job. You can't retire from being someone's mother. Watch me. Madison leaned forward, her voice desperate. Okay, fine. What if I pay you back? What if we all pay you back for everything? We'll get jobs. Real jobs. And we'll pay you back every single penny Dad spent on Tiffany, every payment you made on Cody's stupid loan, everything. With what job, Madison? You take pictures of yourself for a living. Cody's biggest professional accomplishment to date is losing other people's money in cryptocurrency. Your father just got fired from the only job he's had in 20 years. I can do other things. I have marketing skills. Social media is a real business. She wasn't wrong about that. Madison had built a substantial online following and was probably more business savvy than either of her male relatives. But that didn't change the fundamental problem. Madison, this isn't about the money. It never was. This is about respect. It's about being valued as a person, instead of being treated like an ATM with feelings. We do value you. When? When did any of you ever once ask me how I was feeling? When did anyone in our family ever consider my opinion before making a major life decision? When did any of you treat me like I mattered for something other than my checkbook? Madison opened her mouth, then closed it again, because she couldn't think of a single example, and we both knew it. Your father texted me to be gone when he got back from his fake wedding. He said he hated old things and that he deserved a new life. And you, Madison, you helped him plan that wedding. You chose his happiness over your own mother's. I just thought you'd be fine. You're always fine. You always figure things out. You're right. I was fine. I figured it out. I figured out how to be happy without a bunch of people who clearly didn't want me around. Madison was crying again. And this time I had a strong suspicion the tears were mostly for herself, rather than for her father. So that's it? You're just going to let Dad die in the hospital, and let Cody go bankrupt and just never speak to any of us ever again? Your father isn't dying, Madison. He's having anxiety attacks because his irresponsible lifestyle finally caught up with him. Cody isn't going bankrupt because of me. He's going bankrupt because he borrowed a huge sum of money for a stupid business idea, and then spent the money on toys instead of building the business. I stood up to leave, but Madison grabbed my wrist. Mom, please. I'm begging you. Just help us one more time. Promise. I promise things will be different. I looked down at her perfectly manicured hand on my wrist, then back at her tear-streaked face. Madison, you want to know what different looks like? I gently removed her hand from my arm. Different is when your father starts paying his own bills. Different is when Cody gets a job that doesn't involve skin other people for money. And different is when you call me just to talk. Not because you need something from me. But what if we did those things? Would you forgive us then? Forgiveness and trust are two very different things, sweetheart. And trust has to be earned. I walked away, leaving her sitting there in the coffee shop with her tears and her phone and her sudden, dawning understanding that actions have consequences, even when you're young and pretty and used to getting your own way. But as I rode the elevator back up to my quiet, peaceful condo, I couldn't quite shake the image of Hank in a hospital bed, alone and scared. Because despite everything, some foolish part of me still remembered the charming young man I'd fallen in love with 30 years ago. And that was the part of me I'd have to be most careful about. The part that might still be vulnerable to manipulation. The part that might still want to save people who had no interest in saving themselves. That was the part that could ruin everything. 2 days later, Brenda Mae Collins called me with news that changed everything. Martha, we need to meet. Immediately. Something's come up in the divorce proceedings that you need to know about. An hour later, I was sitting in her plush office, watching her spread a series of legal documents across her massive mahogany desk with the cool efficiency of a blackjack dealer in Vegas. Hank's been busy, she said, without any preamble. Busier than we thought. What do you mean? Brenda Mae handed me a thick folder. He filed a counter-petition for the divorce. He's claiming you've been hiding assets, manipulating the finances for years, and that the demolition of the house was a malicious destruction of marital property. He's asking for half of everything, including the business. I laughed out loud. He doesn't have a case. The house was legally mine. The business is legally mine, and I have meticulous documentation for every single financial transaction. That's what I thought too. Until this. Brenda May slid another document across the desk. This one had an official-looking seal at the top. Hank hired an investigator of his own. A good one. My blood went cold. What kind of investigator? The kind that found out about the trust. The trust. I'd completely forgotten about the trust. Martha, why didn't you tell me about the Thompson Family Trust? Established in 1998? The one that technically owns 40% of your business assets. My hands were shaking as I reached for the document, and there it was in black and white. The irrevocable trust I'd set up 25 years ago when Cody was born, designed to protect our family's assets and provide certain tax advantages. The trust that, in a moment of marital optimism, I had named Hank as a co-trustee. I forgot, I whispered. We never used it. It was just sitting there. Inactive. Well, it's not inactive anymore. Hank filed papers yesterday, claiming his rights as co-trustee to access the trust's assets. If a judge agrees that the trust is legitimate, and that Hank has rights to those assets, he could take 40% of your business. He could take 40% of everything that was purchased or improved using business profits over the past 25 years. Your condo, your savings, your retirement accounts. I felt like I was falling down a very deep dark hole. Can he do that? Legally? That's what we're about to find out. His new lawyer is good, Martha. Better than I expected. This isn't the simple, open and shut divorce I thought we were handling. I spent the rest of the day in Brenda May's office, going through every document, every contract, every single financial record from the last 25 years. By evening, the picture was clear and it was terrifying. Hank might actually win. If the trust was deemed valid, and it looked like it was, and if his rights as co-trustee were upheld, and they very well might be, then everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, everything I thought was safely and solely mine could be split right down the middle. There has to be something, I said for the 10th time, my voice raw with frustration. Some loophole, some technicality. Martha, Brenda May said, her voice gentle but firm. I've been doing this for 40 years. Sometimes bad people win. Sometimes good people lose. And sometimes the law just doesn't give a damn about justice. That night I sat in my beautiful downtown condo, looking out at my beautiful city view, and realized that I might lose it all. Hank, the man who was sleeping in his car and having panic attacks, might end up with half of everything I had spent my life working for. The irony was so thick and bitter I could taste it. In trying to punish him for taking me for granted, I had inadvertently reminded him that I was worth taking seriously. In trying to show him how much he needed me, I had shown him exactly how much I was worth. My phone rang. Hank's number. I almost didn't answer, but some morbid curiosity made me pick it up. Martha. His voice sounded different. Stronger. More confident than it had been in weeks. What do you want, Hank? I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? I dropped the claim on the trust. You dropped the restraining order and the divorce proceedings. We go back to being married and we pretend none of this ever happened. Absolutely not. Think about it, Martha. You give me another chance and I give you back your money. I stay with you and you stay rich. It's a win-win. Hank, you cheated on me. You humiliated me. You tried to steal my house and my business. You told me I was old and worthless. I made mistakes. I was going through a midlife crisis. It happens to everyone. No, it doesn't happen to everyone. It happens to selfish, entitled people who think their feelings matter more than other people's lives. Martha, be practical. If this goes to court, you could lose millions. Millions. Is your pride really worth that much to you? And that's when I realized something that changed everything. Hank wasn't calling me from a position of weakness anymore. He was calling me from a position of strength, because he thought he held all the cards. He thought I'd be so terrified of losing my money that I'd take him back, just to keep it safe. He thought I was still the same frightened woman who would rather be miserable than be alone. He thought wrong. Frank, I said calmly, let me ask you something. How much do you think I'm worth? What do you mean? My net worth. The total value of all my assets. How much do you think I have? I don't know. A few million, maybe? Try again. Silence on the other end of the line. Hank, you lived with me for 28 years, but you never once paid attention to anything I actually did. You never looked at the real financial statements, you never asked about the investments I was making, you never wondered why I worked such long hours, or why I was always on the phone with lawyers and accountants. Martha, what are you saying? I'm saying you have no idea what you're really fighting for. And you're about to find out why that's a very big problem for you. I hung up the phone and immediately called Brenda May. Brenda May, it's time for phase 4. Get ready to show Hank exactly what he's been taking for granted all these years. Phase 4. The one where he discovers that the trust is the very least of his worries. Because Hank had just made his final fatal mistake. He had threatened to take what was mine, assuming I'd be too scared to fight back. He was about to learn the difference between someone who's afraid of losing everything, and someone who's ready to burn it all down to the ground, just to watch him cry. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. Hank arrived in his only remaining suit, the navy blue one I'd bought him for our anniversary 3 years ago. He looked confident, almost smug, like a man who was absolutely certain he was about to win the lottery. He had no idea what was about to hit him. Brenda May and I took our seats across the aisle from Hank and his lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named David Parker, who'd built a formidable reputation on handling complex financial cases. Parker had clearly done his homework. I could see the thick folder of documents he'd prepared on the table in front of him. Your Honor, Parker began when the judge called our case. My client, Mr. Thompson, is seeking his rightful share of the marital assets that his wife has attempted to hide through a series of illegal property transfers and ongoing financial manipulation. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Harrison, peered over her reading glasses at the paperwork. And this primarily concerns a trust that was established in 1998? Yes, Your Honor. The Thompson Family Trust, which my client co-established with his wife, and which gives him equal rights to the trust's assets, which we estimate to be valued at approximately $4 million. Hank was practically glowing. $4 million was more money than he had ever imagined having access to in his life. Judge Harrison turned to Brenda May. Counselor, how does your client respond to these claims? Brenda May stood up slowly, and I caught the slight, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Thompson, does not dispute the existence of the trust. However, she would like to present evidence regarding the full scope of the marital assets that Mr. Thompson is now claiming. Proceed. Brenda May opened her own folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson has based his entire claim on the assumption that the Thompson Family Trust represents the majority of his wife's assets. However, he has been operating with woefully incomplete information. She handed copies of the document to the judge, to Parker, and to Hank. Hank's face went from smug to confused to bone-white as he read it. Your Honor, Brenda May continued, her voice clear and steady, Mrs. Thompson's total net worth is not $4 million, as Mr. Thompson has mistakenly believed. According to this certified financial statement, prepared by the accounting firm of Bradley, Thompson and Associates, Mrs. Thompson's current net worth is approximately $47 million. The courtroom was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Hank's mouth was hanging open like a broken gate. The Thompson Family Trust, Brenda May went on, represents less than 10% of Mrs. Thompson's total assets. The vast majority of her wealth comes from a series of shrewd real estate investments, diverse stock portfolios, and several other business ventures that were purchased and developed over the last 30 years, using her own inheritance money, not marital assets. Judge Harrison was reading the financial statement with her eyebrows raised nearly to her hairline. Mrs. Thompson, is this accurate? I stood up. Yes, Your Honor. My husband lived with me for 28 years, but he never took a genuine interest in our finances beyond spending the money. He has absolutely no idea what I've been building during our marriage. Furthermore, Brenda May continued smoothly, Mrs. Thompson would like to present evidence that Mr. Thompson has been systematically stealing from the marital accounts for the express purpose of conducting an extramarital affair. She handed over another, much thicker folder, this one filled with credit card statements, bank records, and itemized receipts. Over the past 3 years, Mr. Thompson has spent approximately $127,000 of marital funds on gifts, travel, and various other expenses directly related to his relationship with a Miss Tiffany Collins. This, Your Honor, represents a clear case of embezzlement of marital assets. Hank's lawyer was now frantically whispering in his ear, but Hank just looked like he was about to be sick. Your Honor, Brenda May said, delivering the final crushing blow. In the interest of resolving this matter quickly, Mrs. Thompson is prepared to offer Mr. Thompson a one-time settlement. What kind of settlement? The judge asked. Mr. Thompson may keep his personal belongings, his car, and he will receive a one-time tax-free payment of $50,000. In exchange, he will relinquish all claims to any marital property, all business assets, and all trust funds. In addition, he will be required to repay the $127,000 he embezzled, either in cash or through wage garnishment over a period not to exceed 10 years. Hank was visibly shaking now. Martha, you can't be serious. I looked at him directly for the first time all day, my voice cold and clear. Hank, you said you wanted a new life. This is your new life. You can accept the settlement and walk away with $50,000, which is far more than you deserve, or you can choose to fight it in court and walk away with absolutely nothing except a criminal charge for embezzlement. Embezzlement. Hank's voice cracked. You can't prove that. Brenda May handed the judge one last document. Actually, Your Honor, we can. Mr. Thompson used marital credit cards to purchase expensive jewelry for his mistress. He charged vacation expenses to joint accounts without his wife's knowledge, and he routinely withdrew cash from the business accounts for personal use. All of this is meticulously documented. Judge Harrison had clearly seen enough. Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument, I would strongly suggest that you consider this settlement offer very, very carefully. Based on the evidence that has been presented here today, your wife has more than enough grounds for criminal charges that would likely leave you with far less than $50,000. Hank looked at his lawyer desperately, but Parker was just slowly shaking his head. Your Honor, Hank said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. I'd like to request a recess to consider the settlement. You have 15 minutes, the judge replied. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Hank approached me, his eyes filled with tears. Martha, I had no idea. About the money, about how much you'd built. I swear I never meant. You never meant to get caught. I corrected him. Frank, you spent our entire marriage treating me like the hired help, while I was busy building an empire. You thought I was just some dependent little housewife you could discard the moment you got bored. I was stupid. I was selfish. Can't we work this out? Can't we try again? I looked at this man I had once loved, this man who had shared my bed for 28 years, and I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, no love. Just nothing. Hank, take the settlement. Use the $50,000 to start over. Get a real job. Find an apartment. Learn how to be responsible for yourself. And maybe someday you'll finally understand what you threw away. And if I don't take the settlement, then I will file criminal charges, and you will spend the next few years of your life in prison for embezzlement. Your choice. Hank signed the papers 10 minutes later. As I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright Texas sunshine, Brenda May shook my hand. That was, without a doubt, the most satisfying case I've handled in years. So how does it feel? To be free? I looked up at the big blue afternoon sky, breathed in the cool autumn air and smiled. It feels like winning. 6 months later, I was sitting on the beach behind my new house. Not a condo, but an actual house on the water, with a yard and a garden and more than enough space for the new life I was building for myself. My phone rang. It was Madison. Mom? I got a job. A real job. I'm a marketing coordinator for a local business. I wanted you to know. That's wonderful, Madison. How do you like it? It's hard. It's a lot harder than I expected. But I'm learning things. About business, about being responsible, about what it means to actually earn something instead of just having it handed to you. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Mom, could we get coffee sometime? I'd like to tell you about the job, and maybe I'd like to get to know you. The real you. Not just the mom who fixed everything for us. I looked out at the ocean, watching the waves roll in, endlessly carrying away the old and bringing in the new. I'd like that very much, Madison. Really? Really? But honey, we go Dutch on the coffee. She laughed, and for the first time in years it sounded completely genuine. Deal, Mom. Fair is fair. As I hung up the phone, I realized that this was what victory actually looked like. Not revenge, not punishment, but the quiet, simple satisfaction of finally being valued for who I was, instead of for what I could provide. I was 52 years old, I was worth $47 million, and I was, at long last, completely and utterly free. And the best part? I was just getting started. Thanks for listening, y'all. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters.